You are truly at the forefront of iPS cell research. I feel that most people don't really experience cutting-edge science and technology as something close to them. It tends to feel like something out of science fiction or happening in a completely different world. iPS cells were born from the tireless efforts of so many researchers. Koji, I understand you spent quite a long time at the Research Institute. How long was that exactly?
I was there for about 7 years and 8 months, roughly 8 years.
What was it like at the lab after Professor Yamanaka received the Nobel Prize? How did things unfold from there?
Well, before the Nobel Prize, actually, before iPSCells were even discovered, there were fewer than 20 people in Professor Yamanaka's lab. After the discovery, it suddenly exploded to hundreds of people almost overnight. Faces I'd never even seen before started showing up. We started with fewer than 20, and then the scale just grew tremendously.
So, Koji, after those 7 years at the Research Institute, what kind of activities have you been involved in since then?
I really loved researching iPS cells in Professor Yamanaka's lab. But I didn't want iPS cells to just remain as a mere invention. I wanted to know how we could truly change the world with them. So when I left the lab, I went to explore various places in America. My brother helped support me on the trip. I went to Silicon Valley, now known as the Bay Area, the stretch from San Francisco down to San Jose. That's home to Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and more recently, NVIDIA, Apple, Hewlett-Packard, so many companies transforming the world with bold new ideas. I was genuinely inspired. Coming here, I realized that it's not just about making new inventions. It's about learning how to use them to actually change the world.
So, after earning your doctoral degree at Kyoto University under Professor Yamanaka, you went on to study at Stanford. Did you continue your iPS cell research there as well?
Yes, I continued my iPS cell research there. But on top of that, in America, there was also exciting work happening in what's called direct reprogramming. Instead of going through iPS cells, you can directly convert skin cells into nerve cells by inserting genes that essentially convince the skin cells they are nerves. This technology, which bypasses iPS cells entirely, is called direct reprogramming, and it seemed like the next frontier beyond iPS cells. I was conducting that research and writing several papers on it. At the same time, Stanford's lab environment was incredibly supportive of innovation. If I expressed a desire to challenge things beyond just academia, to use non-academic power to create change, the professors there understood and supported it. They didn't get upset if I pursued that alongside my research. There, I got to meet all kinds of entrepreneurs and venture capitalists. Through those encounters, I truly came to understand that there are forces beyond academia that can change the world. Academia is powerful. Professor Yamanaka taught me so much. But the next step was to combine that academic power with the power of innovation. That's ultimately what led me to found iPS in 2015.
So, you established iPS as a system to actually connect all the research you had accumulated with society. Hearing about starting a venture in America sounds like a huge undertaking. I imagine there were quite a few struggles along the way.
Personally, I consider struggles to be my hobby. Stress is fuel for me, so I don't really think of difficulties as burdensome. But there were certainly all kinds of things that happened. America has such a diverse culture. For example, as a researcher, I had absolutely no idea how to start a company. I asked someone, "Where should I even start?" and was told, "First, you need to consult a lawyer." Now, you may or may not know this, but legal fees in America are incredibly expensive. $900 an hour. At current exchange rates, that's something like 140,000 to 150,000 yen. just unbelievable. It's like, what is this? Total shock. But in Silicon Valley, there are systems in place where lawyers support you in starting a company even if you don't have that kind of money. It's a great system, and that's how I got started. There were plenty of other struggles too. I tried to move at one point and called a moving company, but they showed up with just 2 people and no equipment to handle heavy items. When I pointed that out, they just shrugged it off. There are so many unbelievable stories, but honestly, that's all part of the fun of running a startup.
So, Koji, you started things off with a startup. Could you share some memories from that time?
The way we started was that at Stanford, there are shared facilities that multiple startups can use together, since none of them has money individually. You go there and get access to experimental equipment, which is essential because each piece can cost tens of millions of yen on its own. If you join, they give you a desk and an experimental bench, about this big, for 150,000 yen a month. Quite a bargain. In my case, I had the chance to meet the founder there. I told him what I wanted to do, how it would benefit society, and that I absolutely had to do it. And he said, "You can join already." Everyone calls it a backdoor admission, but I've always insisted it was a recommendation admission. If you get recommended, it's not through the back door. That organization is called StartX, and it's quite well known. Being part of it carries a good reputation, so everyone keeps teasing me about it. Eventually, the 150,000 yen bench setup just wasn't enough anymore. We were running a lot of experiments, and opportunities kept growing. We had to move out, but the Palo Alto area around Stanford has incredibly high rent. A one-room apartment goes for around 400,000 yen, and even shared student housing costs about 200,000 yen. It's insane. We were at a complete loss, and while looking for a real garage, we found one, though it had a car parked in it. We found that garage and built a lab inside. That was the beginning, and we're still in that same garage today. Of course, since it's a company, we have board meetings. Now, when you picture a board meeting, you probably imagine everyone sitting around a huge conference table. But we don't have that. We put a picnic table in front of the garage and held our board meetings there, under the open sky with a parasol. We're actually still doing that now. We still don't have a conference room.
The garage and the picnic table are still just as they are?
Exactly. In fact, just 1 year ago, the Japanese Minister of Education at the time came to visit, and we took a photo together at that same picnic table.
Does the image of a research institute feel like it's changed quite dramatically?
Well, there was really no other choice. It was our only option. But conversely, it shows that it can still be done, right? Cultured cells have to be grown in a sterile environment. You can build something like Apple or do programming in a garage. That's fine. But cell culture absolutely requires sterile conditions, and the garage was full of mold and bacteria. At first, everyone worked hard at cleaning, scrubbing the roof and everything. But that didn't really solve the problem. So we actually did proper construction, sealed the roof, built a proper ceiling, put in walls. We renovated the whole thing from scratch to create a stable environment where we could reliably conduct cell experiments.
So, from Stanford, moving into the garage, the American office is still in the garage. What about the Japanese side? What are you doing there now?
On the Japanese side, we are producing medical-grade cells for pharmaceutical companies around the world, as well as for individual clients. We obviously can't produce human medical cells inside a garage, so we've created a clean room within a facility at Kyoto University and manufacture there. So what we did was, the garage serves as our office and research facility, and for manufacturing, we rented space on the Kyoto University campus. There, we built an extremely clean facility, one that has received approval from Japan's Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare for specific cell processing, and that also complies with FDA standards and other international regulations for producing medical cells. We cultivate cells there and supply them for corporate research. As for our work with companies, it's not just research. What made iPS cells so remarkable is that they're reproducible. Anyone can make them, even students. But that also means you can't just put any iPS cells back into a person's body. iPS cells intended for the human body can't just be research grade. They must be strictly quality controlled and guaranteed to be sterile. That's exactly what we produce. The pharmaceutical companies we work with aren't using them for research. They're actually producing cells for transplantation into humans. They're creating transplant-ready cells and have already begun transplanting them into patients. That requires an incredibly pristine production environment. The other side of our work is creating personal iPS cells. Until now, iPS cells were limited to those produced within large national projects. Our vision is that it should be completely natural for everyone to have their own personal iPS cells from the moment they're born. Our company's mission is to make that a reality, and we've already started mass-producing iPS cells for personal medical use. Both of these operations are being carried out at our manufacturing facility in Kyoto.